Welcome all of you aspiring DJs and all of you people that are trying to learn how to rage and entertain people who have stumbled upon the correct training video. Today I'm going to tell you guys how to be a DJ, what a DJ does, some of the concepts of being a DJ and the techniques of being a DJ, an overview of the software that a DJ uses, which is what you see on your screen right now, and then we'll also learn how to mix two songs together and I have the same BPM and also mix two songs together that have different BPMs. For those of you that don't know what the term BPM means, don't worry, that's what the first part of this video is going to be all about. But before we get into techniques and exactly how to do what we call mixing, let's talk about what a DJ is and what they do. A DJ is basically someone that plays and mixes music live as it is playing. This is either for commercial distribution, personal use, or for a live audience. Essentially what a DJ is they have one track, one song, and they have to figure out how to transition that song into a different song but make all sound like one continuous track, so there's never a lull in the mix that they create, and their main motivation is to constantly entertain people, make sure everybody's always having fun. So that's probably why you're here. But before we go into the actual techniques, let's discuss some of the concepts. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about the software that a DJ uses. This is what you see on your screen right now. This is called Virtual DJ. The reason I'm using this software is because it's free to use. There is a premium version with more features, but for what we need and for what a very basic DJ is going to need, this free version is more than enough. And I'll have the link to the download of this in the description for this video for any of you that want to follow along or just fiddle around on your own. So now we'll kind of describe the layout of this. In the bottom half of this, underneath where all these buttons are, you'll see this empty area, this empty black box area with kind of like a file hierarchy here on the left, kind of like similar to your documents on your computer. This is where you're going to try to find music to load and put onto these actual tracks. And then in the top half up here where you see all of these buttons and what looks like a CD player, this is where the songs are actually going to be played and where you're going to manipulate them and actually do the real physical mixing. And as you can see, it's kind of split down the middle, and you'll see the same controls on the left as you do on the right, and it's color coordinated. Right here you see the blue, and right here you see the red. Now we'll talk about some of these buttons and what they do, some of these controls. As a preface, most of you probably have seen DJs that do mixing and fiddle around with an actual physical controller. And what that is, it's called a DJ controller. What that is essentially every button that you see on this screen right here will also be on that controller. So the controller is not necessary to do the mixing. Everything that you see on here can be manipulated and clicked through the mouse or touch screen. But what the physical controller does is it makes it a lot easier to do multiple things at once. You can transition between things easier. You can equate it to essentially a keyboard versus a virtual keyboard. A lot of you would probably prefer a physical keyboard because you can feel the distinction between buttons, whereas a virtual keyboard, it's just all kind of on one surface. So that's kind of the benefit of using an actual physical controller, but those can be upwards of $250. So for most of you that probably don't have that money to throw around, we're just going to focus on the virtual software right now. So we'll talk about some of the controls on this software. Right here you'll see what is called a crossfader, and you can see it, it's color coded based on the blue and red songs here on the left and the right. Basically what this is going to do is if you put it all the way to the left, the song on the left will be playing. If you put it all the way to the right, the song on the right will be playing. If you have it in the middle, both of them will be playing simultaneously at the same volume. Now this is one of the only controls that by controlling it and by moving it around, you are manipulating both songs. You are doing something to both songs. Other controls, such as what is known as the tempo control right here, I apologize for my terrible circling. These are called tempo controls, and a lot of the buttons on the left and the right sides will only manipulate the song that's on that side. So what does tempo control mean? What does tempo mean? Well, tempo is a measure of the speed of a song, how fast it is, how energetic it is, usually correlates to that. And this tempo is measured by a statistic up here called BPM. BPM stands for beats per minute. You might have heard me say it earlier in the video. This is a measure of how fast the song is, of how many beats there are per minute. You can think of it like your heartbeat. The faster your heart beats every minute, the more energetic usually you are, the more energy you're spending, and the faster it's going. That's what BPM means. Now, why is BPM important? Well, what we're going to do now is we're going to bring in two songs to show you why BPM is important. And in order to put songs into this software, you're going to go into this little documents folder. You're going to find where your songs are. Mine are in a folder titled DJ Tutorial Songs. And here we're going to put in a song called Animals. In order to put the song in either side, you just click and drag it to whatever side you want. I'm going to put in a song called Animals here. And on the right, we'll have a song called Toulouse by Nicky Romero. Now, you'll see where I showed you the BPM earlier. I'll go ahead and circle it again. Now there is a number there, and there's a lot of other statistics there, characteristics. But the only thing we're going to focus on is the 128 BPM. You'll notice the BPM for the song on the left and the BPM on the song on the right are the exact same. This is a very good thing. You don't have to change this BPM at all. Why is it a good thing? Well, when you're mixing songs, it's important to have them have the same beats per minute. Because let's say when you're mixing a song that has 128 beats per minute with another song that has 80 beats per minute, one song is going to be much slower than the other, and that's the song with 80 beats per minute. So when you try to transition from a fast song to a slow song, that is not going to sound natural. It's going to take people out of the rhythm of whether they're dancing or just nodding their head to the music. It's just not going to sound natural, and it's not going to sound good. So you want them to have the same BPM, and this tempo control is what's going to make them or change that BPM. So if you go up, the BPM will go down. If you go down, the BPM will go up. And then if you click this button right here, it'll bring the BPM back to its original state. And we'll talk later in the video about how to mix two songs with different BPMs. But for now, these songs naturally have the same BPM, so we'll talk about that. And we'll try to mix that. Another important characteristic of being a DJ is knowing the idea of beats versus bars and versus phrases. So, if a song has 128 beats per minute, that means every minute there's going to be 128 beats. Pretty self-explanatory, right? But what is a beat? Well, if you look up here at the very top of the screen, I'll circle it right now, you'll see a number in blue, a number in red, and then some rectangles. And then one of these rectangles is filled in with a color. So let's just focus on these top four rectangles and this number on the left. So what this is saying is that every rectangle represents a beat in a song. And then this number right here is saying what number beat you are on in the phrase. So let's define some of those terms. A beat is the ns of a song. Usually when you're nodding your head to a song, you're nodding it subconsciously to the beat of the song. Your brain just recognizes that rhythm. So that's what these rectangles represent. And the spot that is colored represents where in a bar what beat you are in a bar. A bar is a set of 4 beats. So these 4 rectangles together is one bar, okay? And the rectangle represents where you are in that bar, what beat you're on. Now, a phrase is a set of 8 bars, which, if you do the math, is 32 beats. Now, this number here to the left is showing that you are on the 16th beat in a phrase. Unfortunately, this number does not go up to 32, so it only shows a half phrase. So after it gets to 16, it'll go back down to 1. But every 2 times that you see a 16 here, you have gone through a whole phrase. Why is that important? Well, every phrase in a song, you're going to have a minor change in how the song sounds. This is usually either done by a small percussive sound put in or just a very minor change in how the song sounds. Every 2 phrases, so every 64 beats, which translates to 16 bars, you're going to have a major change in the song. This is usually the chorus or the beat drop coming into play. It's going to be a very, very distinct change in the song. So then why is that important? Well, when you're mixing songs, you want to align the phrases of one song with the phrase of another. So you can see here how these 2 rectangles right here are in the same box, and these 2 numbers are the same. That is what you want. That is what you want. So how do we do that? How do we start mixing these songs? Well, the first step, obviously, is to pick your songs. The second step is to match their beats, which these songs are already matched. Their BPMs are already matched. And the third step is to figure out where you want to transition your songs. Now, in order to do this, we're going to use something called cue points. Essentially, this is a bookmark. You can equate it to a bookmark in a song. So right here is where you can control where you want to be in the song. Just click anywhere in this. These are called waveforms, and they kind of measure the volume and the intensity of that point in the song. So click anywhere in here, and then if you go down here to where you see these 8 buttons and every button has a number in it up to 8, this is where you're going to set those cue points. In order to set a cue point, make sure that on this drop down menu, its hot cues is selected. So let's say I want to set a cue point here in this blue song called Animals. All I have to do is click the point that I want to set a cue point and then left click on any of these buttons. Now you'll notice when I clicked on it, it's highlighted blue. That means there is a cue point at this point. So if I select this cue point, that song is going to start playing at that cue point. So it's kind of like a bookmark, like I said. Or you can just hit play from any point in the song, and it'll start playing. So now what we want to do with this cue point is we want to set a cue point at the beginning of a phrase in Animals so that the end of that phrase leads to either a minor change or a major change in the song. So by looking at these waveforms here, like I said, these measure the intensity and the volume of a song. You can see here at this point, I'll go ahead and circle it for you so I can direct your attention. The waveforms are pretty small or medium size, and then all of a sudden they go to a very, very high waveform. So this is basically telling us that there's a major change here, and this could potentially be a beat drop. So we'd listen to this part. So there's a major change, you can tell, and the beat drops there. So what we want to do is we'll go back up here to our very top part where we were talking about bars and beats earlier. And we want to start at the first beat after that beat drop, because that's where we want Toulouse to come in. We want Toulouse to come in at the start of that major change. Because if there's going to be a major change in this song, you might as well bring in another song with the same BPM, because it'll be just like a similar major change. If that makes any sense. And if it doesn't, I'll try to illustrate it later. So what we want to do is we want to get to the first beat of this beat drop. So we'll kind of direct it towards here, and you'll see we're on the 13th beat on the phrase before the beat drop. Now if you look at this little CD thing, which makes the wiki noise that most of you probably are familiar with, you can fine tune this to get to what beat you want. So you'll notice when I move this left or right, it goes to the beat to the left or the right. So we'll go clockwise to go forward until we get to this first beat after the beat drop, where this is number 1 in the blue. That is where we want to transition the song. So what we need to do is go one whole phrase before this beat drop so that we know, and set a cue point there, so we know at that point is when we want to bring in this next song and start to slowly make that transition. And I'll talk more about that here in a little bit. So we'll go counterclockwise to move back until we get to the first beat in the previous phrase. And we'll just fine tune that tiny bit more, and we're at the first beat in this previous phase, and we want to set a cue point here. And what this is we are not actually going to ever call this cue point, but as this song is playing, we know that at this cue point we want to start transitioning into this song. So we want to make Toulouse start coming in at this point. This is essentially like a reference point. A lot of DJs will use cue points in that way. So now we're going to look in Toulouse, and we'll see another point right here where the waveforms build up and then they kind of drop, and that signifies that there is a major change in the song. So we'll direct our attention there, move the waveform similarly to how we did with the Animal song on the left, and we'll see we're at the first beat. We're looking at the number on the right here because it's the red number. We're at the first beat of the phrase that we want to start after Animals drops. So we want to go back from this a whole phrase. So we'll go counterclockwise until we get to a number 1. And you'll see that's right here. And we'll set our cue point there. Now this cue point is the one that we are actually going to click on when we get to this reference point in Animals that we created. So now we are ready to mix our songs. Before I mix this, I'm going to walk you guys through what exactly I'm going to be doing as the songs are playing. So I'm going to play Animals. I'm going to start playing that song. And then once I get to this cue point, which we'll be able to see if you look up here, I'll go ahead and circle and direct your attention. If you look up here, you'll see there's a white mark here, and you'll see when I play it, these waveforms are moving. These are the same waveforms that you see right here, just amplified. So when I play animals, this white mark shows what point in the song you're at right now, and then everything on the right is what's upcoming. So when I play it, it starts moving to the right. So this is what I'm going to be looking at when I'm looking for my reference point. I'm not going to be looking down here. You'll see here it says Q1 in blue. So when this Q1 gets to this white mark, that's when I want to hit the Q to start the next song to transition in. So that's what I'm going to be looking for as Animals is playing. Now you want to make sure your crossfader is all the way to the left, and then once I hit this Q point for Toulouse, I'm going to slowly transition into Toulouse, and then once that beat drops, I'm going to put it all the way so that only Toulouse is playing. So make sure to pay attention to everything I just said, and I'll try to talk you through it as the song is playing, but it might be a little bit loud. But make sure you pay attention to what I said. So we'll go ahead and play Animals. See that Q point coming in? I hit the Q point, and now we're slowly transitioning. Start to hear Toulouse. And now we're just playing Toulouse, which you can hear there. So it sounds like a natural transition because we are using that major change of Animals to make a change to another song. That is the point of phrases. So I'll go through that again. Notice how I slowly transition here, and then once we hit that beat drop, once both of these say 16, I want that next one to be only Toulouse. Okay, so pay attention. We'll go ahead and play Animals. Start Toulouse here. Build up slowly. And then at the very end, as soon as that beat drops, we very quickly go from the middle to the right so that only Toulouse is playing. So that's essentially the basics of creating two songs, or mixing two songs, excuse me, that have the same BPM. Now, what if the songs have completely different BPMs? Well, when that happens, I'm going to bring in two songs here that have different BPMs. This song's original BPM is 120, while this song's original BPM is 127. So that's 7 beats per minute off, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's definitely drastic. So in order to make the beats the same, you use what I mentioned earlier called the tempo control. So when you go up, the beat BPM will go down. When you go down, the BPM will go up. Excuse me. So now we use that to align those BPMs. They are both now at 127. So now what we want to do is mix the songs. Now I've already set cue points for these songs because we are going to do a different form of mixing called overlaying, and what that essentially means is you are playing both songs together in a way that they complement each other. Usually this is done when there is a lull or maybe a quiet part of a song, an instrumental part, and then you overlay the vocals or the a cappella, which is what only vocals means, of another song into the instrumental of that song, which is done here. And I'll show you in the song on the left here. You can see there's going to be a lull. So you can hear how kind of the song volume goes down and the intensity goes down. That's a perfect time to bring in something else to overlay. So since we have those BPMs the same now, you can hear the vocals of this song. We're going to try to overlay that onto the song on the left. So what we're going to do is we already have our cue point set. And this, similar to the Animal song, is the reference point saying that once I see this cue point cross this white line up here, I'm going to cue this song on the right. I'm going to click this cue point so it starts playing. But the difference with overlaying songs is the crossfader is always going to be in the middle. Sometimes it'll be maybe a little bit to the left if you want the vocals to be louder, or the right if you want the song on the right to be louder. It just depends what your preference is, but it's never going to be completely on one side. Otherwise, only one song will be playing. The point of overlaying is for two songs to be playing at the same time. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and play these songs, and once I hit this reference point, I'm going to cue this song, and you can kind of hear how they complement each other. There's going to be a point in the mix where there's going to be two vocals kind of playing at the same time, but I want you to pay attention to how they complement each other rather than conflict. And then after I show you this mix, we'll play a mix where the BPMs are not the same, and you'll see how much different it sounds. So we'll go ahead and play this, and pay attention to some of the concepts that we learned in the earlier mixing tutorial with 2 songs with the same BPM, how I use those in this. So we'll play this. Pay attention for that cue point across the white line. Start it there, and now you'll hear the instrumental of the song on the left is playing with the song on the right. And right here you'll see how the vocals conflict a little bit. So there you saw kind of how the vocals conflicted. The male voice played a little bit after the female voice played. But the point of that is they may sound, it may seem like you never want to have 2 vocals playing at the same time. But the falling action, meaning that the end of the line in the a cappella version, in the woman voice, at the end of that line is when the beginning of the male voice played. So they're complementing each other rather than both starting to play at the beginning of each of their respective lines, lyric lines, I mean. So that's how they complement each other. So you can tell how natural this sounds when it's overlaid and when the BPMs are the same. So in order to illustrate how it sounds when the BPMs are different, I'm going to do the exact same thing I just did, but with the natural BPM of this song, which is 120. And you may not really notice it if you don't have an ear for that sort of stuff in the beginning, but once you see how the 2 vocals conflict, it'll be very, very obvious. So we'll go ahead and do this again. Look for the cue point, bring it in. And one thing we'll even notice is how uneven these rectangles up here are moving for the beats. Now pay attention here when the vocals conflict. So you heard there how the vocals are conflicting, how one vocal is playing directly over another and they just kind of get meshed together and you can't even distinguish between the 2. That is the downfall of mixing songs with 2 different BPMs. You never know what you're going to get. It doesn't sound natural and it takes people out of the moment. It takes the people that you're trying to entertain and makes them think, wow, that was bad or that wasn't natural. They can't focus on having fun because you're not doing your job as a DJ. So basically that is the foundation of being a DJ. There's a lot of different kinds of DJs. There's DJs that are turntablists, which do the wicka wicka sound, and they're a lot more technical. There's radio DJs that have to communicate with listeners and do a lot of more interpersonal communication. But all of them know how to mix songs because that is the foundation of being a DJ. So after this tutorial, you know what a DJ is, the basic concepts of being a DJ, such as beat matching, the idea of BPM, the concepts of beats, bars, and phrases and how they're related, and you also know how to apply all of that into mixing a song with another song using cue points when their BPMs are similar and when their BPMs are different. And you also were introduced to the idea of overlaying, so you can take apart these items and apply them together in different contexts and maybe mix 2 songs with a transition that have different BPMs, or overlay songs that have different BPMs, or overlay songs that have the same BPMs. But the idea is all of these skills are a foundation for what you can do as a DJ and put your own spin on songs and figure out what your sound is and how to entertain people. For those of you that want to further this and actually purchase a DJ controller, they run about $200 to $250 at the cheapest. But like I said, everything you can do on the DJ controller you can also do with a mouse and a keyboard and just this free virtual software. And again, I will have that link to the software in the description of the video. I hope you guys learned about being a DJ, and hopefully you can start your career of being a DJ and become world famous.